Today we're back with the second part of my interview with Ntombe Thongo, the award-winning musician, Transkanda musician, and Sangoma, who has been talking to me about being a Sangoma and what it means to have the calling. And last week I left the conversation at a very interesting note when I asked him this question. Let's carry on watching.
So earlier on, I mentioned how I was lucky enough to become a Sangoma when I was 19. And like you say, I mean, I didn't even know about Sangomas. I knew almost nothing, just what I'd been brought up, this word witch doctor. But because I was exposed to it so young, I did learn that, well, there I was, this white boy, I was 19 years old at university, and these people told me that I had the calling, and they knew all these things about me. They were not people who knew me. And it was because of a university course that I found myself sitting in front of Sangomas who threw the bones. And they told me all these things that were all true. And they knew all these things about me and about my ancestors that were all true from since I was little, and I'd never met these people before then.
My God.
But so I discovered from then, and luckily also because I had a teacher at that university who told me, if they say you must go, you have to go. Even though he was a white Afrikaans man.
Wow.
And he said to me, if they say you must go, you must go. So he made me go back the next week, and then that started it. So I learned then that even though I was white and so on, this was happening to me, and I was going into Soweto illegally in those days and so on. But, I mean, and nowadays there are more white Sangomas and more white Sangomas. So, I mean, can white people and colored people and other people who are not indigenous African people become Sangomas? Really?
It's a question I get almost every day.
That's the answer.
Yes. Each and every person can become a Sangoma if they are the chosen one.
If they get called, yeah.
Yes, not because they want to be.
So you mean, so anyone's ancestors might call them, they don't have to be African, Pondo.
They don't have to be a Mambondo or Isikos.
Yeah.
Which is, I just want to be very clear about this part, because we're speaking about the very most important part of the most issue that is actually happening in South Africa. Now, as you say, like there's quite a number of white Sangomas also. I think there is a misunderstanding a lot about this particular part, where because Amaxhosa and Amampondo and Amazulu and I mean all the black tribes, they are the ones who being still like us connected and being able to do these rituals for such a long time, whereas the other cultures who were lost, as I believe, they were lost from their connection of their ancestors. Then it get lost that the fact is, each and every person can be called by the ancestors. It doesn't matter which color, because everybody dies. And when everybody dies, no one believes that everybody dies and go to hell.
Right.
People go from this planet to another planet which we are not exposed to, most of us. But then the ancestors do come back to us.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why people, they go to church, they believe that Jesus died and will wake up and come back to us.
Right.
Okay? And that I strongly believe in that, even though I have no idea how it went. It's a history for me. But it's the history that is very believed by a lot of people, and I also have to believe in it. But as Ubungoma, any person from any culture can become a Sangoma. Because they get to be called by the ancestors.
And so because they have to serve and they have to have a healer.
Yes.
And they have to bring the ways of the ancestors.
The ways of ancestors. And then here is this one particular part that I want to talk a lot about it. It's whereby when the white Sangomas become Sangomas, they only come to the people who are still connected to ancestors. For instance, the black tribes who have Sangomas, for like Amaxhosa and Amampondo and whoever, which is the most where the white people are Twasa with. They I wouldn't go to someone that was not connected to the ancestors. I would always go to somebody who's actually connected to the ancestors to be able to be helped.
Right.
Which is my belief is that the white Sangomas who go to the Xhosas or to Amampondo is only because they see there is the light there.
Right.
These people are still very connected, strongly connected. It's not because they're there to buy culture or anything, which is so called in nowadays. Because I keep hearing this thing that we're selling our culture. What does the white people know about the ancestors? Where do they slaughter their animals? because there's such and such crowds that must be used.
Right, because there's so much culture in it.
There's so much culture,
tradition.
and they actually all of that idea, from my experience of this 37 years of being a sangoma, this whole idea of culture, ubungoma has nothing to do with that. Like, it's not a culture; it's a calling of the ancestors. So it's not a culture that belongs to the tribe of Amambondo or Amakros. It's how do I call it in English? My English is a little bit limited, but it's as I said, like it's something for a person who is identified to be one who's chosen to serve.
Well, I think you said that. I mean, it's not a culture; it's a calling.
It
comes up inside somebody's culture, but in different cultures.
Yes.
So that's why you can have Amampondo, Isikosa, or any different people.
Yes.
Yeah, and they all become sangomas in slightly different ways because their culture is a little bit different. But it's not about the culture; it's about the calling coming up. So then, so the white people, as you say, it comes up in them. There isn't somewhere in their culture. They don't have all those things anymore. Yes. So they're attracted to sangomas in other cultures where they will learn.
Yes.
It's like I once asked a sangoma, why do I have to dance the African style? Why was I taught to dance the African style? Why wasn't I asked to dance like my ancestors danced? And she said to me, because that's what your teacher knew how to teach you. And she knew that dancing will make you connect to your ancestors.
That's all. And that's all.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be able to teach you something that I have no idea what it is.
Exactly.
And you coming to me as a sick person who is actually connected to Amatongo, or want to be connected because they can feel there is a connection there but it's being lost. But then if you come to me as that lost person that needs to be helped, then I can only offer my services that I know, and then that will help you to be connected to your own path. For instance, I for one trained one white guy from England, Ntombe Thongo, from America. Ntombe came all the way from that side with clear dreams that he's going to meet me. And the way that it just happened, it was just so obvious that he was actually sent to me. And when he came and stayed a few days at home without noticing that this is actually me that is there for. And then just one little spark, I was performing in Port St. John's. And at that moment when I performed, he just saw one little thing that he kept dreaming in his dream, which when he came home, I was not with this dress. And then he saw this one particular dress that it was on me at the time of the performance. That's when he knew that he was actually at the right place. But then it was a challenging for him because he's coming from all the way from that side. He had absolutely no idea what he's going through or what it is that is on him, but he knew exactly what he has to do. So in the beginning of his training to become a sangoma, it was all up and down, challenging, but it went very fast that as soon as I opened his path, from my experience as Impondo, doing things in my way, the way that I know, to help someone who's connected to Amatongo, then his path was open. He was, us, in our culture, if I say in our culture now, changing this whole situation of Bungoma into a cultural thing, we don't believe that a black goat is a good goat to be slaughtered to the ancestors because it's black. But actually, when he told me one of his dreams, his goat ceremony was, he had a black goat for his ceremony. And he dreamed this black goat because the black color holds all the colors. There won't be any white if there isn't any black. There won't be any blue if there isn't any black. And anything you put together, it goes back to black. So anything becomes that the black color is very strong. But our belief is that, I wouldn't say like my belief, because it's a thing that is belong amongst a lot of different tribes of Izangoma. Is that something that is black is not good for a sangoma. But he trained with me.
Yeah.
He pumaed. He's a graduate sangoma.
Right.
And then after his graduation, he went back home, and he was able to connect back to the way that his ancestors were. And he went to dig down, finding out where the grandfathers were staying and things. And he started to develop a lot of connection on that side. Now, he doesn't work completely as Impondo Sangoma. He works as Isangoma from his own family.
Yeah.
Which is our duty, is just to introduce the person back to themselves.
and where they come from.
where they came from, and to notice the things that aren't there for them to see. It's not for us or about us that we are Mampondo and we want to have Izangoma to be like us, but we are selling our culture to other people just because we are Mampondo and they are from other tribes or from other cultures. But our job is to actually open up the path for the person to be able to actually connect to their ancestors and go back home and do the things in their own ways.
And serve their people.
And serve their people.
And so the culture itself, or just the way that they get there, then they go back and connect back to their own cultural tradition. So I think the bigger picture we're seeing is that it seems to me that Isangoma and Ubongoma as a culture have got a bigger picture to teach us, especially as South Africans, but in the world. That, that there are these many differences that seem to be between us. And there are these strong cultural differences that seem to be between us. This one says, no black goat. And this one says, we have black goats. And these things all seem different. But when we rise above it, and we just come from the spiritual point of view, we discover that in the end we all have the same spiritual callings, we have the same need to serve the ancestors.
My gosh.
And I think that's a very important thing from what we learn about why there's so many different.
And because of these differences, it all comes back to square one, where humbleness is the only way to be able to deal with Amatonga, because all these connected people, they're very humble. And all they need to stick on is to stay humble and stay focused, to listen and open your arms and your heart to welcome what it is that is brought by the ancestors, and not to try to choose or to be too choosy about which is what, and that is an ego.
Exactly.
And that ego must be taken away, because I have been in Ntombes where, another thing among the black Sangomas in South Africa in particular, I don't know about other countries, a pig is not a welcome animal into the Sangoma of the white in Vemhlo, which so-called was in Zimbabwe, which is the Sangoma house. But I was part of Ntombe Mhlope's Twasa's graduation, and she dreamed a pig to be slaughtered in her ceremony, in her graduation, simply because her great grandfather was a man that he likes a pork meat.
Right.
And because he was the one who actually gave her a calling to come as Sangoma. Now she had to follow what he wanted, which is what we do.
Yeah.
For instance, about these things that we provide when we have ceremonies, from animals into drinks, what kind of drinks that we bring, it's all come from the Abantu Abadala who wanted these things.
That's amazing. So, because that's the bottom line. In the end, it actually does come from spirit. And that's what so many people fail to recognize. That it's not something that people buy the culture or sell the culture or choose to be something. There actually is a real such a thing as a spiritual calling. Yes. And you can be white, you can be black, you can be young, you can be old. It's the ancestors can find you that way. And I think that's what we must all learn.
That's a bigger picture that we need to understand.
We're all human beings with ancestors. And in the end, it can happen to anyone. So one final question then. What about the future? So we see it's all true that it happens even in these days. And but what about the future? Because things are becoming more modern. Sangomas have got cell phones and all of those kind of things. Will there be Sangomas in 50 years' time?
Yes, there will be Sangomas in 50 years' time to come, even 100 years to come. But it's going to be a different story. I'm saying this because, as far as I remember, in the previous years of me being here, the Sangomas won't jump into a taxi, won't jump into the bus. They will prefer to walk.
Right.
And they want any cell phones at the time, and they want any TVs or anything like that would be around their surrounding houses. So, which is where the understanding of that, it's not even an understanding, I think it's a mindset that the Sangomas are coming from in such a old way that it should stay like that because it was like that before.
Mm.
But forgetting that actually the world is changing. Everything is going very fast and changing very fast.
Right.
Up to the point where people, they still believe that we should actually have just umqombothi in terms of when we have a ceremony or a Ntombe for a sangoma, we should have umqombothi because our ancestors, they have no idea about what the brandy was made of or beers were made of whatsoever. Forgetting that before we actually have umqombothi, what is it called? Corn, umbona.
Mm.
It's not in South African or African.
It was brought by Europeans.
It was brought by Europeans. So what? Then the question is, what then the ancestors then, what they would use to be able to do a ceremony? Apparently, a ceremony, it's actually done by mouth.
Mm.
When someone is sick or has a calling, it's all about to speak to the ancestors. The most important part of this whole journey is to actually it's a communication, mouth to the ancestors,
Right.
into the dreams and stuff like that. But then, of course, there are some things to be presented to the ancestors, to ask or to give to the ancestors, or to ask or to how do I say it? But basically to present them with something. At the olden days, they would use amas from the cow. So they make amas and take intloy and use intloy as an umqombothi.
Mm.
And then when the millies come in, then they start somebody invented to make umbona to become something to make umqombothi. And then coming back to these new drinks that were also introduced to us by the Europeans, which are brandies, Coca-Colas, I can name beers and stuff like that.
Mm.
Then our ancestors, especially the brandy, they were introduced to this when the Europeans came to Africa. According to history as well, you would hear this. They would take some cows from these black people in the villages and give them a piece of mirror, or a bottle of brandy or whiskey whatsoever. And then it becomes something very important. Brandy becomes something very important to these adults. Up to the point that they fell so in love with it because it was something that would make them feel good and feel important. If you have one bottle in your house, you're the most important man in the village.
Right.
Then they believe in that thing, that brandy is very important. So then by the time that passes on, when they passed away, they won't leave back what they loved when they come to your dreams and ask for something. Which is why we don't have to leave the brandy out. We have to bring the brandy in when we do ceremonies. Not necessarily meaning that the ceremony won't succeed just because there's no brandy, but the brandy must be presented because it's something that our ancestors also love.
So as people die and enter the world of the ancestors, they take new things with them,
Yes.
and traditions change.
That's why I'm saying the world is changing that fast.
Right.
Because it goes like that. That's why I'm saying like in the next 100 years, there will be sangomas. But it will all change. Because we've been seeing a lot of changes.
Mm.
Now, sangomas travel all the way from Eastern Cape to Cape Town. How many months will you walk to Cape Town?
Exactly.
If we still keep the fact that it was then, they weren't transported at that time. That's why they were walking.
Yeah. So that's very important because it is, the world is changing and we adapt, and people get too stuck in the idea that you must do exactly what the people in the past did. And you can say, did the people in the past have brandy? Did they have Coca-Cola? No.
Then you start
They
arguing with
grew,
that.
Yeah.
But actually, it
So it was changing all the time. But that does give us hope for the future. Not only as Sangomas, but there's so many things, especially in a country like ours,
Yes.
where there are different traditions and different cultures. And where people were saying, no, it's our tradition to do this. No, but it's our tradition to do that. To learn that traditions also adapt and change.
And they do.
And they do.
They do a lot.
And that's why, because I think for me, for what we're talking about, in the end, the bottom line of the story is that there's tradition and there's culture and there's history, and all of these things are true and important. But in the end, it is about spirit. In
Yes.
the end, there is spirit, and spirit does not have a color, and spirit does not have a culture, and spirit does not have a history. And in the end, that's what Sangomas are.
My course. Exactly what it is.
My course.
My course. I'm grateful I have this time to talk to you about this because I think it's very, very important for people to... one thing that worries me a little bit more is that people aren't that more interested now in understanding this thing that we're talking about today. They're more interested into what is coming, what is new.
Yeah.
Like if you listen to music is changing every now and again. The way people see things, the machines. Speaking of cell phones, one cell phone today is out. The next month there's a new one coming in. So people are very much in that world. What is new? What is coming? But then about this spiritual life, no one is very much deeply like reading any book about it or like getting any some sort of understanding. Then when they see something out of the blue, like here's the white trouser, here's an Indian trouser in town walking, then they start to point fingers. Right. Oh, me, or you. And that doesn't really work.
No, because they don't even know about it.
Yeah, absolutely, that's my point.
So that Sangoma lady I was speaking to, you know her, is Umama in Port St. John's.
Yes.
When I said to her, so why are there so many white Sangomas since 1994? She looked at me and I could tell she was just looking inside me. And she said to me, because the white people are finally free.
My course.
Free to listen to their own ancestors, free to rejoin the world of people as people, all coming from the same ancestors.
My course. Thank you to the people who stood up actually for that change, Because
Exactly.
I strongly believe that actually that's exactly what it is as well. Because people were scared. People were scared what would happen to them or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And now look at, even among the black the black tribes or black color, whatever, there's a lot of change that have happened a lot from that 1994. There's a lot of that has changed among them.
Yeah.
And things are just happening in like it was never there before. We even forgotten about where we're coming from a little bit. Like what used to happen just before 1994 is kind of like getting like forgotten a little bit, and we only remember the good fruits of Madiba release and voting for the first time, stuff like that. But there's a lot of change that actually happened.
There's a deeper change going on.
Yeah.
There's one other thing I want to say. I know that you also, I just want to mention that I do know that you've got an album somewhere in the works.
My course.
That your last album, Thokozile, won the SATMA in 2012.
Yes.
South African Traditional Music Award for Best isiXhosa album.
Yes.
And I know that I've heard at least some of this new album a little while ago, and I'm so excited. I mean, to me, it's a whole another level forward, and I think people really will feel that in their spirit and their soul, because ultimately, music is also something that changes people.
Yeah, so there is an album that should be out sometime soon. I won't give the details yet because I'm myself not 100% sure.
You'll hear it here, because when that new album comes out, I'll make sure that I speak to you and everyone knows about it.
Of course.
So excited.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. It should come out soon.
That's great. Well, Margaret, thank you so much for talking to me today.
My course.
And I hope we get a chance to do this in the near future when your new album comes out.
My course. I'm looking forward to that too.
My course.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember, if you haven't seen the first part of that interview, go back on YouTube and watch last week's episode, and you'll really learn a lot from that first part of the interview. So we look forward to having Ntombe Thongo back on My World in the not too distant future when his next album is out. Time still for one of your questions, and Ilse has written, and Ilse, you have got an app that you are interested in developing, and you asked whether you should go forward with it and whether it's going to be successful. And what is very clear from the chart is that this is a good idea to go forward with, but right now it's not exactly the right time. You should wait a few months towards later this year or maybe early next year, and it's very important for you to hire the services of a lawyer you can trust right from the very beginning. That is very clear in the chart. Sounds to me like you've probably got a good idea there, and that's why you need to make sure that you protect it right from the very beginning. Then that is a yes, you should go ahead with this because it is a good idea. But I can't really yet answer the question as to whether the app is going to be successful. That we can only know once you've actually put something into action, and then I can measure from that. But certainly step one is there, and that is go with it at the right time. It's a little too soon now. The very earliest is the very end of September, and the later after that is going to be fine. But obviously, with an app, you're not going to want to leave it too long. Remember, if you have a personal question about something that is unfolding in your life in the very near future, contact me at my website, where you can fill out a special form to ensure I get all the right details, or just email me with your date, place, time of birth, and what your question is. Remember, it's got to be something quite specific unfolding in the near future. Join me next week for part 2 of Dreams. Finally, time to talk about interpretation. YouTube, noon on Friday, Cape Town TV, 7:30 p.m. Friday, repeating 1:30 p.m. Sunday. See you there.